The grasslands of British Columbia are interruptions in a massive landscape of forest. They rest in the rain shadow of mountains, so dry that few trees can grow. Instead, there are unique communities of grasses, broad-leafed forbs, and wild animals. The grasslands are vital habitat for many species, and they are an essential resource for ranching and recreation. For an increasing number of people, the grasslands provide welcome contact with a vibrant, natural world. But the grasslands are in trouble. The communities are being invaded by a weed so pernicious that it's changing grassland into wasteland. In its assault, the invader uses us as its unwitting allies. This is knapweed. These are the seeds of destruction. The invasion began around the turn of the century with the import of contaminated alfalfa seed from Central Asia. These first few seeds set a course of destruction that is ravaging British Columbia's grasslands. Knapweeds are members of the thistle tribe, adapted by evolution to be aggressive pioneers on disturbed ground. Seeds may lie dormant for years. Some germinate with every rainfall during the growing season. The seedlings concentrate on producing a deep taproot that will guarantee their access to scarce supplies of moisture and nutrients. For a few months, or a few years, knapweed exists as a rosette of leaves close to the ground. All this time, they accumulate reserves of energy that will go into the production of seeds. When enough energy has been stored, the plant sends branching stems upward to produce buds, flowers, and seed. How large the plant grows and how many seeds are produced depends on how much competition the knapweed faces from surrounding plants. In healthy grassland, the plants are small. Few seeds are produced. The invasion proceeds slowly. Where there is little competition, knapweed looks like a shrub. It can produce as many as 40,000 seeds per square meter. In time, the native plants are denied their place in the community, denied the opportunity to produce seeds of their own. Two species of knapweed are especially destructive in grasslands. This is diffuse knapweed. The stems and leaves are pale green, the flowers usually white, sometimes pink. The flower buds are armed with spines that become harder and sharper as the buds mature. In autumn, the plants ripen from branch tips downward until they are dry, brittle, and harsh. Winter winds break large plants at ground level and tumble them across the ground, scattering seed until they become hung up in a sage bush, fence, or ditch. Spotted knapweed grows in locations where there is a little more moisture. The plants tend to be taller, more upright, and darker green in color. The buds are plump, with black spots. They are less prickly than diffuse knapweed. Flowers are pink and often quite showy. Dry stems remain upright, dropping seeds like a pepper shaker whenever the wind blows. Like many dryland plants, the knapweeds have adaptations which protect them from being eaten by grazing animals. The spines of diffuse knapweed make the plants unpleasant to touch, much less eat. The plant tissues also contain chemicals which are irritating and extremely bitter tasting. Knapweed is so unpalatable that few animals will touch it unless they're starving. Even then, it's usually only tender rosettes which are eaten. Here is the crux of the knapweed problem. For every kilogram of knapweed that the land produces, there is a kilogram less of usable forage. There is less food and habitat for native plant-eating animals, all the way from insects to deer and elk. The entire grassland community is disrupted as the complex of native plants is replaced by a monoculture of inedible knapweed. Knapweed never does this in its native habitat. In Eurasia, it's a pioneer of roadsides and eroded ground, and seldom a problem. In the Old World, where it evolved, knapweed is an integral part of the plant community. It has a variety of specific parasites and diseases like every other species. But in North America, knapweed is free of these controls, giving it a real advantage over native plants. Already an aggressive pioneer, knapweed has become an ecological monster. Patches of bare ground among the bunch grasses are just another bare area to be colonized. Knapweed is on the move. More and more of our grasslands are being smothered by its pale green haze. The consequences are severe and affect everyone. Ranchers feel the impact most directly. The grasslands are their basic resource. Every knapweed seed that grows means less forage for cattle. In country where carrying capacities are already low, any reduction is very costly. When the province loses in its ability to produce food, we all pay for the loss. We lose in other ways, too. Infested grasslands produce less game for hunters, and they are certainly less pleasant to walk about in. As the invasion spreads, it is becoming more and more difficult to avoid coming into contact with knapweed. It moves into remote campsites and haunts the fringes of manicured parks. Lake shores and riverbanks have become infested to the point where anglers are finding their once lovely fishing spots overgrown with a spiny tangle of knapweed. In some recreation sites, knapweed has come to dominate everything except paved roads and cleared campsites. It's difficult to walk through a knee-deep tangle, and knapweed spines scratch and irritate exposed skin. In places like this, the land is alienated from human use. The border states of Washington, Idaho, and Montana have had severe infestations for several decades. In British Columbia, about 80,000 hectares of grassland are now infested. Over 1 million hectares are threatened. The total danger is much worse. To the east, in Alberta and Saskatchewan, there are over 10 million hectares of prairie rangeland that could become infested. Lately, the seeds of destruction have been sown here too. One report estimates that the knapweed infestation is expanding at a rate of 16% per year. In all of its travels, knapweed has been helped by people. We carry the seed, and we create bare ground for it to grow in. Seed is carried by motor vehicles of all description, in plant fragments caught up in the undercarriage, or in mud-spattered wheel wells. Gravel roads and trails within the grasslands are ideal places for knapweed to grow, and ideal places for catching a lift. Off-road vehicles are hard on the land at the best of times, but in knapweed country, they create a double jeopardy. Knobbed tires cut into the plant cover and expose the soil, and they are carriers of seed. Worst of all, the infestations started in this way are often in remote locations where they escape detection until well established. The best knapweed growth is often at the edges of motorbike trails. Construction machines are a particular problem. Work sites are the ultimate in disturbed ground for knapweed to invade. Mud-caked machines travel hundreds of kilometers between job sites, carrying knapweed seed with them. Virtually every road, power line, and pipeline becomes infested with knapweed right after construction. Gravel pits are often knapweed gardens. Materials from such places are certain to contain seed. Roads, where they are used, are certain to become infested. Knapweed does not grow well on irrigated land, so forage crops should be knapweed free. But field margins are often infested, so at least some hay bales will contain knapweed. Many outbreaks in British Columbia have started with the use of contaminated hay. Knapweed also travels by air. It's picked up by aircraft using grassed parking areas and runways. The weed has found its way to remote airstrips in this way. Probably the most persistent means of long-distance dispersal has been by rail. It's a problem of weed-infested yards and rights-of-way. Tarred ties pick up knapweed seed where they are prepared and stored. It's been suggested that this is how some of the prairie outbreaks were started. Or perhaps trains are just like any other vehicles traveling along infested routes, picking up seeds and plant debris. And those trains travel a long, long way. One thing is certain. With one exception, every outbreak of knapweed in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba has been along a railway line. Prairie governments are taking the threat very seriously. Infested sites are treated thoroughly with herbicide to eliminate the knapweed. If it ever became established here, the problem could become 10 times as large as in British Columbia. Knapweed can be killed using powerful herbicides like Tordon. Since the early 1970s, British Columbia has spent up to $1 million per year on spray programs designed to slow the knapweed invasion. Roadsides have been targeted for the most intensive treatment to reduce the chance of seed being picked up by motor vehicles. Treatment with Tordon can eliminate knapweed for up to 4 years. The chemical remains in the soil and destroys new seedlings as they develop. But eventually, knapweed appears again, and the treatment has to be repeated. Other programs are designed to keep knapweed out of areas where it is not yet a serious problem. Patches that do appear are treated thoroughly to suppress the weed and reduce the production of seed. Tordon is effective at killing knapweed, but there are limitations. It also kills some desirable broadleafed plants, so its use over huge areas might create problems. It cannot be used near wells or riverbanks, and cannot be applied by aircraft. The cost alone makes an all-out chemical control impossible. There is just too much wild land, too many places for knapweed to hide. What is needed is a control that is less expensive, safe, and permanent. These are the objectives of biological control, a method that uses some of the living organisms which attack knapweed in the Old World. Usually, the biocontrol agents used against weeds are insects. The idea is to have a number of insects attacking the plants in a variety of ways and reduce the number of seeds that are produced. Developing biological controls is a slow process. It begins with field studies to find insects attacking knapweed in the Old World. It's not always easy. Since knapweed is not common, many of the insects are rare. Beginning with a few specimens collected in the wild, scientists in Europe and Canada first developed techniques for rearing more of them. Then they must perform a long series of tests to be sure that the candidate really does damage knapweed. Even more important, it must be proven that the insect is no threat to anything except knapweed. The larvae of this large weevil attack knapweed by eating the root. To find out what else it might attack, adults are given a choice of several different plants to see what they will eat and what they will lay eggs on. Similar screening tests are done with the root-feeding larvae. A total of about 70 plant species are tested. Any evidence that the candidate will damage desirable plants disqualifies it from further consideration. Globe artichoke is a crop species related to knapweed. To be absolutely certain that it will remain safe, the insect is given no choice. It must eat artichoke or die. There is a formal approval process, and an insect can only be released after it has been shown to damage knapweed without posing a threat to other plants. The first releases are usually made in field cages to confine the insects until they adjust to the new habitat and multiply. This yellow moth lays eggs on knapweed leaves, and newly hatched larvae move down to the soil where they feed on the knapweed root. In the safety of the cages, survival is high, and the larger number of insects produced can then be released into the wild to attack knapweed at will. The first biocontrol agents for knapweed were released in 1972. Two similar species of tiny flies lay eggs beneath the scales of knapweed buds. The larvae bore into the bud and caused the plant to form galls instead of seeds. The flies now occur wherever there is knapweed. With none of the Old World parasites and diseases, they enjoy the same advantage that makes knapweed a problem. They are much more common here than in Eurasia. At the original release site near Chase, these two flies have reduced seed production from 36,000 per square meter to just 1,500. But knapweed is so prolific that over 95% of the seed must be eliminated. It will probably take about a dozen different agents to accomplish this. It's sometimes necessary to help new agents to disperse. This root-boring beetle was released in the southern Okanagan in 1976. It was soon damaging knapweed near the release site, but did not seem to travel very far between generations. Thousands of adult beetles have been collected from the original site and transported to over 200 secondary release sites. The beetle and the gall flies together can reduce seed production by about 87%. Secondary releases can be done by anyone who is interested in hurrying the progress of biological control. For insects which attack seed heads, it's simply a matter of gathering bundles of affected stems and placing them in a different stand of knapweed. This is the caterpillar of a small moth. It only attacks spotted knapweed, but will consume almost all of the seeds in the head it occupies. The larvae overwinter in the heads, then pupate, and emerge as adults in early spring. Secondary releases have to be done before the adults emerge. However it attacks the knapweed, each additional agent seems to reduce the remaining seed production by 50%. This means that each new agent has a proportionately smaller impact. We'll need quite a few more to achieve the target of 95% seed reduction. Some of the other candidates being studied include a gall-forming nematode worm, a green seed-eating fly, and a small seed-eating weevil. All of the biocontrol agents should be in place by 1996. But it will take time for them to bring knapweed down to a density that we can tolerate. We could see a reduction in the knapweed problem by the end of the century, but only if we do our part to slow the weed's progress. Biocontrol can only work in healthy communities where knapweed faces competition from other plants. Knapweed cannot be controlled on land that is abused. It's critical that the range be kept in good condition. It's also important that construction sites and disturbed ground be reseeded to hardy grasses to avoid giving knapweed a place to grow. We'll have to do everything we can to avoid spreading seed and starting new outbreaks. When hay from the knapweed zone is used, it should be fed to confined animals, so that the resulting knapweed outbreak is also confined and treatable. Industries involved in construction and shipping will have to clean up their properties and work sites with herbicide. Equipment should be washed or steam cleaned between jobs. Those of us who use the grasslands only for pleasure also share the responsibility for knapweed control. Even casual visits bring us into contact with the weed, and we can easily become carriers. Anytime a vehicle is parked on grass, it may become an agent of destruction. The grasslands are a unique resource. They have a lot to offer in terms of wildlife and recreation. It's worth a little effort to help keep them healthy. Learn to recognize the knapweeds. When leaving the grasslands, take time to check your vehicle. Remove plant fragments and dispose of them safely. Whatever we can do to avoid spreading the seeds of destruction brings us that much closer to stopping the knapweed invasion.